Well, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me from the heart of Silicon Valley on top of the Marriott Hotel downtown San Jose. It's not a bus stop in the background, but some interesting, I guess, sun protection they put up here. This is live and I can show you the background. We are right in the direction of where the planes land in San Jose. So this may be interrupted by some real life sound. I know I never care for my pictures, but you guys have to understand me. So coming live for you from the still ongoing 3-day event set up by Apigee called I Love APIs. Interesting conference at the heart of Silicon Valley down here in San Jose. And what I've done is I've shared some of the key tweets, events happening on this occasion. As you know, the best way to follow me and what's going on happening at an event in general is to follow me on Twitter. All my notes are on Twitter, so part of us helping to accelerate where we're going in general as an industry from an analyst perspective, not only preaching disrupting to our customers, but also disruption to a little bit of our industry. Is like information has to be there instantaneously. This is why everything is on Twitter right away. And then I go back to Storyfy, which is a pretty good tool to collect these, right? This is the view of the show floor as it's down here in the McHenry Convention Center. No shown Silicon Valley about a Tesla. I think we didn't see it today, not sure what they were doing. Interesting enough, you see on the side there also an Indian tuk-tuk, which is part of the attraction of one of the vendors. We get to that later. Oh, here's a better picture of that overall than the hazy art. We started yesterday morning with the keynote over at the, I believe it's San Carlos Theater, historic place. Famous people played there, famous events being held there. Packed place, at least on the downstairs level, so very good attendance with that. And Apigee CEO Chad Carper opened it. I think Chad did a great job talking about the things which generally move the industries. It was a fourth edition of I Love APIs. One of the slides that stuck with me was around every interaction matters. That's absolutely right. What has been seen as data exhaust or the things which are not relevant could be discarded are still important, may come back. And hey, even an analytical model which has never won in the last days or all the count of history, maybe the one which might be winning now. So important to keep all that together running. We had the CTO of Equinix, Coach Lilly, on stage, talking about the transformation that Equinix is going, becoming API-based by themselves. He shared the number of APIs, only a fraction, of course, public, but a good move and good to hear and see what's happening at the company, which basically powers the cloud as a background, which is Equinix. Everybody is an Equinix data center at some point, somewhere, sometime. And then we had an interesting panel moderated again by Apigee CEO Chad Carper, with Mike Sutcliffe from Accenture, James Fairweather of Pitney Bowes. Interesting to see this presumably boring company which just makes sure that the stamps are coming machines is pretty much everywhere at these conferences. Brett Peterson from NASDAQ and Brian McMahon from MapQuest. Right? MapQuest, interesting. People always say, oh, they're still around. Yes, they're pretty much still around. They also get these chats. Interesting conversation. I think good questions from chat. Like do APIs have to do with culture and how you get a culture of sharing? So interesting approach there. Little selfie piece here, not doing selfie, but shoeies. You can guess who the other shoe's from. That's actually Van Keppe's shoe, second edition in the shoey tweeting series after Steve Armstrong last week. Has to be colorful. Sneakers. If you wear some colorful sneakers, come by and see me and we'll do a shoey. And then the celebrity motivation keynote was by John Foley, a former Blue Angel pilot. He did a pretty good job. I found it was maybe a little too long. It was always interrupted by videos and then how it applies to walk us through how the way of working of the Blue Angel, surprise, surprise, applies also to business. Then the afternoon, off to an interesting panel, how to make digital really work with a mix of attendees. We had Saurav Fontanos of Thomson Reuters and Anand Deshpande, the CEO of Persistent Systems, and David Freeman. I think he was even a TCO of something that Telstra is doing. And that's some interesting insights around the adoption and how to get things going. At some point, Saurav took over the moderation of the panel, which was actually quite done well. And then the afternoon saw, again, Chad Carper discussing with the head of digital, Swami Ramaswamy, I hope I got this quoted right from memory, don't have it here, about the impact of IoT and what's happening in IoT. TCS has just released an interesting IoT study with, not surprisingly, findings that companies who embrace IoT do better than the ones who don't know. Who would have thought about this? And literally one of the highlights of Days One was listening to Sam Ramji from Cloud Foundry Foundation, which is basically the best practice implementation arm of Cloud Foundry, part of Pivotal, part of EMC and VMware now being acquired by Dell. Wow, that was a long piece and a mouthful. We're talking about how important it is to continuously innovate, deploy, and integrate into general trends which companies face and how they see disruption. Very interesting presentation. Check for his tweet here, his presentation downloadable on Twitter. Good practice, really worth looking at. And then was award time, so Apigee did a great job really leveraging the area. There was food trucks in the main San Jose Square, you don't know the name, using the historic San Marcos Theater. Lots of our presentation were in the Montgomery Theater, also part of that complex. And last night they rented out the Tech Museum. And of course, no user conference about awards. Was impressed how large companies are using and from a global perspective, are using Apigee. I mean, Telstra was, again, a winner here, featured prominently in the panels too, all the way from down under. A number of very international companies saying Sunset here on top of the terrace again yesterday. This morning we started with the CTO of Apigee, and sorry, I need to check, Anand Jehangir. Talking about 4 design principles which really matter in the age of modern application, he calls it. I call it next generation applications in my research. Interesting perspective how to scale towards these. And no surprise, APIs are the solution, right? Apigee is an API vendor, but there can be no doubt that APIs are the right way of making structured calls going forward between different areas. Interesting to see a significant increase in call volume. Apigee chief engineer, still have to go back here to my cheat sheet here, Shankar Ramaswamy, walked us through how they scale, of course, using APIs too. An increase in uptime of 4 nines, very impressive, of an increased volume of 268% over Q4 last year to Q4 this year. And here's the view on how customers are using Apigee and how Apigee is appificating itself. And then we had an interesting panel of Apigee Unplugged with 6 gentlemen total. Of course, Chet Kappa was moderating us with Ed Arnoff, who was like an evangelist, with Shankar Ramaswamy, who was the chief engineer running product development, was a chat before, Anand Jehangir, who was the CTO, Martinelli, who got made a lot of fun about being a Seattle Seahawks fan, but I don't remember exactly what his role is, and Greg Bale, who was teased by Chet Kappa to the first time since interview to wear a shirt with a collar. But all the gentlemen were in jeans. From fashion observation, check my tweets. I always look what the footwear and sockwear is. An interesting panel. Looks like these gentlemen work well together, had fun together. Always good to see a not so formal working relationship on an executive level at the vendor. And they touched all the important things. So one thing we stuck is was actually Martinelli said the difference between SOA and REST is basically that SOA goes back to schema and how to get to the schema, whereas REST exposes the schema. Heard this before, but it rang with me again. And nice thing, San Jose not too hot, and the McHenry Conference Center is pretty open, so people are sitting on the unfortunately fake grass there, but really enjoying the indoor-outdoor part. And I'm, for instance, recording this also here on the outdoors. Every chance to get outdoors, we should use it. And then interesting panel again with a gentleman from doing development outreach evangelism at Telstra again out of Australia. El Sharif, hope I pronounced it right, from Ticketmaster, and a relatively famous researcher, Michael Schrager, or Schraeg, as I think he's called here, but I have the privilege to be German, so I call him Schrager from MIT. Very interesting discussion about how to monetize APIs and the interesting implications of the API economy, in the sense that you have to let go to be successful, and you have to make customers and developers successful on their platform. The interesting thing is we talked all about developers. My view is my rant at some point. It's really all about the executives who dare to change their business and do things. Then the developers come next. As much as I love developers, and there have to be enough developers from a vendor perspective like Apigee's, but it's really the executives who take the risk of changing the business. And that's pretty much rounding up what happened at the event. Let me go back here and take the control, so you see a little bit of my, squinchy face, as it's pretty bright outside here and I'm not wearing sunglasses. Hello, welcome back. So what are my top 3 takeaways of Apigee's ILoveApis? So the API industry is alive and well, doing there's no question that APIs are the structured standard way for people to get information shared with other constituents, may it be developers, may it be customers, may it be, which was not so much in the presentation enough, may it be the machines, right? Even if I could get away with traditional ways of building software to do with my customers, right? Remember EDI formats, remember the good old ways. So, I mean, for instance, still today, the whole automotive industry runs on this dialect artifact of EDI. Doesn't come to mind right now for me. Bastardized version of EDI for the automotive industry. The chemical industry has it, and it's pretty much still the background. It hasn't changed, right? API calls are the last thing supply chain managers there want to implement and purchasing managers want to implement. But there's no question API is doing well. But once it comes to next generation application scenarios like taming things, or integrating my next generation application, which I've built somewhere in the cloud. Now I've created an integration scenario between my new shiny piece and my not so shiny older pieces. That's where APIs are really the tool, the lingua franca, the way to talk about it. An interesting analogy, so the smart folks of persistent systems, right? APIs are really, to a certain point, like the passport control, right? You want to see a foreign destination, you want to go somewhere, you spend a lot of time planning the trip. But if you forget your passport, you can't really do that, right? And you will not be acknowledged to go on. So it's a little bit maybe security aspect. Metaphors don't always work, but it's just a little piece. I'll come back to that in a second. The second takeaway is enterprise still struggle with making this work, right? There are some showcases which were featured prominently by Apigee, of course, but there's a lot of questions in the audience like, how do I get my company to move to APIs? How do I get the business case going? It's very clear the pure technology perspective of moving to APIs is not good enough. So what is needed is a impulse on the business side. The main one which has been used here, almost beaten to death, is digital transformation, digital winners, leaders, and so on. IoT is coming up. So it's all the drivers on the business side to do that. And that is part of getting an API story going at an enterprise. Lots of questions: how do I justify this? How do I monetize this? How do I keep when it's going, right? The next thing is when it's going. Michael Schrage from MIT, I'm saying the American way, Michael Schrage, had an interesting way of viewing this and saying, look, even if you do the right decision, first decision right, of building the APIs, then you constantly have failure lurking around the corner, because you may want to not be happy that someone is one of your partners by your customers, that they're making so many other dollars on top of that, right? So, and executives, companies might get greedy and try to loop that back. Interesting perspective here, right? Twitter was used a lot as an example of someone who built a platform, didn't realize how to monetize things, and then cannibalized the platform to a certain point. Excuse me, take the whole Meerkat and Periscope episode as an example. How things could not work, and of course it was in the headlines this week that unfortunately Twitter had to let go. I think it was 8% of their workforce. Good luck for the people who don't have a job anymore. And then it's really clear, third takeaway is next generation application must use APIs. There is really no question, no discussion about this. The future is clear that this is happening. It's not a one-time fad. It's not going to be replaced by something else. Personally, I think it's good we have the end of the whole SOAP versus REST discussion. It just has to be an API, which is good, and REST largely probably has won, except for where the current load is, which probably is not even in SOA. It's probably still an EDI and XML-related documents. For Apigee, I think a good event. I can't relate it to other events. No official attendee numbers were shared, but I think a good start and an energized community. Very global. I heard German, a big contingent from Swisscom being here, who just launched their overall cloud strategy platform, prominently featuring Pivotal's Cloud Foundry. But my only concern on that side would be that APIs are just a tiny piece of the overall puzzle when I have to build that application. Very important piece, simple piece. Like I said before, I can't make it to my dream foreign vacation destination or my business trip if I don't have a passport. Very important, no question, but very transactional nature once you have it, right? So it will be interesting to see how Apigee can extend that beyond, because I clearly think they're punching from messaging strategic perspective, which is good, right? Beyond their weight, it keeps you fit and lean and mean. But I think there might be more to come, and the big tech stack guys, IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, who are missing. Well, you know who I mean, right? They have a word to say and say, oh, well, all these APIs are just a little part. So Apigee will have to work on being independent, being a relevant vendor in that space. But they seem to be in a good track from that perspective. But overall, a good event. It was great to learn more from developers, also have more time to speak to executives about how they struggle with making business case of new technology. We had a bank at a round table who just had an approval for a strategic part of the next 2 years, but they're only 2 more weeks in the project. So the responsible was jokingly saying, well, what do we do? We go to a conference, right? That's the first thing we do. So very interesting to see that. Not much more to say from me. Thanks for following me here at the event. Thanks for watching this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Ask me questions anytime. Thanks for your time watching, and I speak to you soon. Bye-bye.